Hi, welcome to Joy in Our Town, and I'm Doreen Jones. I'm going to be your host today. And once again, we're going to be talking about FEMA and how they interact, how they're on the scene. Now, you may have heard that name and you may have seen them on the scene, but there's a whole lot more that takes place. And so today, our special guest is Mike Sharon, and he's going to be talking to us about the heartbeat of FEMA. Will you welcome with me, Mike? Mike.
Hi.
So glad to have you with us today.
Great to be here, Doreen.
All right, thank you so much. Well, I know everybody's heard about Katrina and Sandy and even Oklahoma. A lot of things have been happening that we didn't want to happen. But I want to talk now about being prepared. We want to talk about some of the things we can do. And maybe people don't really understand about FEMA and the true mission. Can you tell us the mission of FEMA and what the heartbeat is?
Sure. We're the Federal Emergency Management Agency. There's really 5 things that we focus on, and that's preparing for, preventing, responding to, recovering from, and what we call mitigating the effects of disasters of all kinds, be it a storm or a tornado or something like that, or a natural or human-caused disaster, like a hazardous materials accident or something along those lines, or even terrorism if it should have come to that. But we're just part of the team. You hear a lot about FEMA on the news, but we're just one small segment of the folks that are out there trying to help citizens. It's really state, local government, neighbors helping neighbors, and private and volunteer organizations that are really the heartbeat of emergency response. People just hear about us more, but we're one small part of a very large team.
Tell us a little bit about National Preparedness Month.
Sure. National Preparedness Month is every September, as it has been since 2004. And it was an initiative that was started after we became part of the Department of Homeland Security. For years, there's been Fire Prevention Month, usually in October, and people usually do fire drills. And we decided back in those days that it was time to take a broader approach to preparedness and try and seize on that kind of a month to get people to take the kinds of actions that they needed to be ready before a disaster of any kind.
Now, there's a National Preparedness Community.
There's a National Preparedness Community. It's actually a website that can be accessed through our main preparedness website called ready.gov. And what the National Preparedness Community is, basically it's almost like an online social network where you can sign up for various areas of interest and about topics specific to preparedness. You get emails, and there's an opportunity for chat and things like that. Again, that can be accessed through our website, ready.gov, and there's a tab up there that I believe is Be Involved or Get Involved, and it'll take you to the National Preparedness Community where you can get more involved and be part of the conversation.
You have several organizations that are coming out of this, and one is called Ready. Can you explain that one?
Sure. Ready is our large kind of umbrella for all kinds of preparedness across the country, and that's designed to help individuals and businesses take the steps that they need to be ready before an emergency that may affect them, to make it easier for them to rebuild after a disaster takes place, and perhaps even prevent the effects of a disaster at their home or business.
And is that open to the community? Anybody can get involved in that?
Yeah, Ready is basically just a website and an informational resource. But Ready is also a gateway to some other types of things. I mentioned the National Preparedness Community where people can get involved online and learn more and be part of that conversation. But through the ready.gov website, you can also learn more about what we call Citizen Corps, which is a way to get involved in your local community, to be part of the solution and help your neighbors before, during, and after a disaster.
Now, Citizen Corps, is that in different localities or?
Here in the Delaware Valley, we have Citizen Corps councils in most of the local jurisdictions, including Philadelphia, the surrounding counties, and South Jersey as well. And they're basically umbrella organizations, or if you like to think of it another way, like a tent, where other kinds of volunteer emergency organizations can get together, coordinate, share resources, and get citizens involved in their own communities in preventing and responding to disasters.
Now, can you tell our viewers how can we better prepare ourselves?
Well, preparedness does begin at home, and it really starts with the individuals. Because as I mentioned, in a concept that we call whole community, you think about police, firefighters, your state government, your federal government, sometimes volunteer organizations as being the responders, but those first responders are folks like you and I, neighbors helping neighbors. And so if we're prepared, we're better able to help our fellow neighbors. So some of the very basic things you want to do at home is first, be informed. Know about the kinds of hazards and risks that may affect you. Do you live near a creek that may get flooded? Are you in an area that experiences a lot of winter storms? Do you live on the coast where you may be susceptible to hurricanes? Do you live near a chemical plant or an oil refinery? Know what's out there. Then you want to make a plan. Think about what it is that you want to do to protect yourself and your family. How will you communicate with other family members and friends to let them know that you're all right before, during, and after a disaster? Where will you go if you have to leave your home? Then you want to build a kit. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but it's assembling the very basic kinds of supplies, or just knowing where the basic kinds of supplies are around your house to keep you self-sufficient for at least 72 hours. Make sure you have a flashlight. Make sure you've got non-perishable foods that'll hold you over for about 3 days. Things like water, about a gallon of water per person per day. And then finally, to get involved if you have the opportunity, if you have the time and the ability to work with other people in your community, work with organizations in your community so that you're better able to help your neighbors and help your government in the event that there should be an emergency.
So how do we stay in contact in order to know what help is available during a time of crisis?
Sure. In the Delaware Valley, there's a great resource. It's called Ready Notify PA. And so if you have a cell phone or a BlackBerry or something like that, you can sign up for emergency alerts that go out all the time about weather emergencies, about things like if there's a siren testing at the refinery here in South Philadelphia, and even traffic hazards. If a bridge is closed or something like that, all of that information goes out via that system. And the website is www.readynotifypa.org. And that will tie you to the alert systems for Philadelphia and all the surrounding jurisdictions here in the Delaware Valley.
Now, you said that's also an app as well?
It's not an app. It's a free service that you sign up for where you provide an email address, you provide your cell phone number, and it's a notification service, and it's not an app. You don't have to do anything at all. There's also recently, in newer phones, a system that's come out that will allow the Weather Service and your cell phone carriers to deliver alerts directly to your phone without you having to do anything at all. It's on some of the newer phones, they've just come out in the last year or two, but pretty much eventually over time that's going to be a service that's found on all new phones that are built and sold in this country.
So that's being required now?
Yeah, it's being required of the cell phone carriers, much like for those of us who remember the emergency alerting system or the old emergency broadcast system, it's
being
an ability.
Replaced,
it's being replaced because folks are closer to their cell phones than they are to their TVs these days.
I get flash flood warnings on my cell all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Well, let's talk about preparedness for kids.
Okay, kids are very important in making sure that they're prepared. Because you have to look, if you have children in your household, you have to look at some of their very special needs. They may be very fussy about their diet. I know I was as a kid. I wouldn't necessarily want to eat, peas out of a can or something like that. So if your kids have special dietary needs, maybe they're allergic to have peanut allergies or they got special diets, you need to make sure that the kind of food or supplies that you keep around the house will be prepared for that. If they have special medications that they need, an asthma inhaler, or an EpiPen or something like that for allergies, make sure that you have plenty of those on hand as well so that if your pharmacy is disrupted, that you won't be in a crisis trying to get those medications. And for kids also, they have a lot of energy, and so things to kind of keep them amused, to give them something to do during the time of the emergency to kind of take care of some of that energy would be very helpful. Because if you have to go to a shelter or you have to stay in your home for a long period of time, the kids are going to get very excited. They're going to get bored very quickly. So books, games, things like that to occupy their minds and keep them in kind of a sense of normalcy so a scary event isn't quite as scary to them.
Now, what about the teachers? Is there a plan or something from their schools?
There are. The Department of Education, both nationally and through the states and in the local school districts, works very hard with schools to make sure that they have an emergency plan. And those things are being updated all the time. We recently, along with the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services, issued some updated guidance for emergency planning in schools in the wake of things that we learned about the shootings up in Connecticut. But schools have a plan for how they're going to take care of their students. And for parents, I'd urge them to get familiar with what that plan is. We talk about being involved in your children's school, but part of that being involved is knowing what that school's emergency plan is. If the kids have to be evacuated, they may go to another school. So it's important to know where that school is. So you don't go to their school, that you go to the place where you can be safely reunited with them.
Now, You know, I never even thought about pets. What about people that have pets, that are pet lovers, and in a time of crisis, what's the emergency plan for them?
Well, I'm one of those people. I don't have children, but I do have pets.
You love your pets.
Yeah, I do, including a little guy that I rescued off the streets who became part of the family. It is very important to have plans and supplies available for your pets as well. A lot of shelters these days will allow you to bring your pets perhaps to the shelter, but they may keep them in a separate area for hygiene purposes. But yes, if you're a pet lover like I am, you want to make sure that you're taking care of them as well and that you're prepared to take them with you if you have to evacuate. Because we've seen in prior emergencies, going back to Hurricane Katrina and even before, that some folks won't leave their home if they're worried about what could happen to their pets. So again, food is important to have. Probably a carrier of some kind if you have a smaller pet like a cat or a smaller dog. If you have a carrier that you can put that animal in, that'll be good. That'll help you when you get to the shelter. Things like, again, pet toys for the pets, water bowls, all the very basic little supplies that you could probably fit into a small bag that you would need to keep that cat, that dog, or that other animal sustained for a couple of days.
Well, now that we got the kids, we got the pets, but I think to my heart would be our elderly, those that are disabled or on medication. What's the emergency plan for them?
Well, if someone, like you and I are a little younger and able-bodied, the first thing that we can do is if we know someone who has those needs or is a little older, is to check on them and make sure that they have a way of communicating. But if you are let's start with older Americans. If you are an older American, make sure that you have someone that you can be in contact with, that you've got a neighbor or that you've got relatives, maybe even out of town, that know how to contact you and you're able to contact them so that they can check up on you. Certainly as we get older, things like medication and other kinds of medical needs, like walkers and crutches and things like that, become very important. So you may want to have additional supplies of those kinds, as well as any special dietary requirements that you may have. It becomes also very important to stay tuned to what's taking place in your community because as an older American, it may take a little longer for you to evacuate. You may need some special assistance to evacuate or get to a shelter. And so the more information and the earlier you can contact your local officials if you need help, the better off you'll be and the more quickly they'll be able to respond and get you to a safe place.
But also there's some things set up for businesses as well.
It's important for businesses are also part of that heartbeat of the community. And while we've talked a lot today about individuals and families, it's also important, we believe in FEMA, for businesses to be prepared. Because after an emergency has affected a community, the businesses are the things that get back up and running, and they help people return to that sense of normalcy. So if you're a business, through ready.gov, there's also information specific to businesses about the things that the business should do to prepare, about talking to staff members, about having a business emergency plan so that if your business is disrupted, you can get back up and running, and that your important business records are protected so that you're ready and able to start business again and become a viable part of your community.
Can you, and as we begin to close, give our viewers those websites that they can go to and any information that you think is pertinent and necessary at this time?
Sure. The best place to start is www.ready.gov, and that's got information for individuals and businesses. It's got information for older Americans, Americans with special needs like mobility, for children, for pets. And that's the best resource to start getting yourself prepared. If you want to learn more about FEMA, we have our own government website. It's www.fema.gov. And then finally, if you have the willingness and the ability to get involved in your community, I'd urge you to go to learn more about Citizen Corps, and that's www.citizencorps.gov. But that's also accessible through the ready.gov website.
Thank you so much. You've given us a lot of light, and it is time for us to prepare. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for being with us today. And we want to take this advice because we want our viewers to be prepared and be ready for any type of thing that would come. Hi, I'm your host, Doreen Jones, and you're watching Joy in Our Town. Today, our guest is from FEMA, and is going to be talking to us about a grassroots organization called Citizen Corps. One of the things we want to do is be able to better serve our community in case of a disaster. So welcome with me, Peter Herrick from FEMA.
Thank you for having me.
So glad to have you with us today. Let's talk about what is the Citizen Corps group?
Well, they're actually an organization that came out after 9/11, and their founding is actually very unique. After 9/11, there was a huge push to have local readiness campaigns. And part of that was National Preparedness Month, which is September. And the other part is Citizen Corps. And it's an organization that's run at the local level. There are a lot of chapters throughout the area, Philadelphia County, Montgomery County, Bucks County. We can give some more resources on how to find your local chapter. But what they are is they're organizations that in a disaster can pitch in with first responders so that way they can help respond to that disaster as well. And they get a lot of special training, they learn a lot, and can actually do a lot to help community after a disaster.
Now, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but some people may not understand what those initials FEMA stand for. So let's go back and let's explain what is FEMA and what is their mission.
Well, FEMA's the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We're a part of the Department of Homeland Security. And what we do is we respond to, recover from, and prepare for different disasters. So throughout the disaster cycle, before, during, after, we'll work with state and local officials to make sure that we achieve each of those goals: preparedness, response, and recovery.
Now, are there other government groups that's involved with the Citizens Corps?
Well, FEMA is the main entity that works with Citizen Corps, but they have a number of affiliate organizations as well. And these are things like Medical Reserve Corps. So they specifically help with first aid and things of that nature. There's the Fire Corps, which is more firefighter support. There's a program called VIPS, which is the Volunteer and Police Service, and they go out and help police officers. There's also something called a CERT team, which is a community emergency response team. All of these different entities help first responders and local officials in the event of a disaster.
Now, this is an educational part. Talk to us about that.
So what each of these organizations does is based on the specific stuff that they're designed to support, they'll get training. Some of it's FEMA training, some of it's state training, some of it's local training on what different disasters can do to people, what the risks are, and then how they can help. And that's a number of things that are really specialized for what each organization does.
What about the volunteer opportunities that are involved?
I'm glad you asked. All of those are volunteer opportunities. They're ways for people who, it may not be their primary job, but they have experience or interest on how to pitch into their community. So anyone that's interested in getting involved should look at a number of these organizations. And they can get information on all of them at the ready.gov website.
And what about the training? What type of training do they need if they want to help medical or whatever? How do they go about getting trained?
Well, all you got to do first is show an interest. Reach out, sign up, talk to the different organization at the local level. And then they're going to start to work with you to make sure you have the right training. You don't need to come in with this whole grandiose plan. You just need to come in with the passion and the desire to help.
So in other words, a heart for people to want to see people helped.
Absolutely.
That's great. I can see your heart and your passion even as you're talking. But let's talk about a little bit about the police involvement and emergencies concerning FEMA.
Well, all disasters are local disasters. And that means that at the local level, the first responders are the ones that are there on the scene first. And those are your ambulances, your fire trucks, your police officers. They're the ones that show up first to respond to the disaster. When they need help, they call up the state, and the state will bring their resources. And then when the state's overwhelmed, they call us. So this is helping at the first response level. It's a huge opportunity for people to get involved and help their community.
Now, what about the councils? You have Citizen Corps councils?
Yeah.
Explain that.
What they are is Citizen Corps is organized by council, and there are a number of local councils throughout the country. And like I said, there are ones in Philadelphia, Bucks County, Montgomery County, all throughout the area. And you can go to that ready.gov site to get information on where your local council is, just by plugging in your zip code. But all of these councils are managed at the local level. There isn't a state version that kind of comes in. These are people that are joined at that local level and work together in the middle of a disaster.
So give us an example of how all these Citizen Corps group members come together during a time of crisis.
Well, that's something that the local officials will reach out and go, listen, we need some help. And the council will get together and they'll start to organize and they'll identify the right people and they'll work with the local officials to get them to the scene and figure out how they can be of assistance.
Now tell me again, where are these councils located that our viewers can go to find out?
Well, there are a number of them throughout the area. What I'd encourage people to do is go to ready.gov, and you can go and search Citizen Corps, and there's a neat little box. You can plug in your zip code, and it will tell you where your local councils are. They're all throughout the country. No matter where you may be interested in, you'll be able to find one.
Now, does Citizen Corps also interact with community leaders and pastors, churches, groups?
Yep, and that's part of that whole community idea that FEMA has brought out. What that is whole community is that idea that regular emergency response agencies at the state, local, and federal level can't do everything. So we'll bring in all of these different organizations like Citizen Corps, like churches, like community organizations, and figure out how we can best help each other and what resources we can offer.
Talk to me about Citizen Corps before and Citizen Corps after.
So before, we're really talking about the training and the preparedness and all of that sort of stuff that most of us should be doing on a regular basis. Not going to be a whole lot of helpful during a disaster if you don't have the training you need. So that's what they're doing when they're not in the middle of a disaster. And afterwards, they'll work with those state officials. Depends on what the incident brought. If it's debris, they may help with some debris clearance. If it's helping people muck out houses, that may be what they do as well. So it really depends on what the needs are.
What are some of the examples that you can give us as far as the Community Corps, even locally in our area?
What do you mean?
As far as what they've done in the past?
Well, each council does things differently. Depends on what their passion is, what their interest may be, and what skills they can bring to the table. It also depends on the relationship that they have. You know, sometimes not everyone's willing to reach out for help. But what they'll do is, in the middle of a disaster, they'll arrive on scene and they'll start to help out in whatever way they can. You know, the specifics vary on a regular basis, and a lot of that happens at the local level. So it's not something that I see on a regular basis, but it does happen, and we hear great stories about it afterwards.
Do you have a lot of people that are volunteering, or are you at this time in need of more volunteers?
I think it goes without saying, we always need volunteers. You know, in the middle of a disaster, everyone wants to be able to help. This is a great way to do it. What we really encourage is that help that you want to do after a disaster, it needs to be organized. Otherwise, you can sometimes create a little bit of a mess yourself. Don't try and show up to a place on your own. Make sure you're affiliating with a reputable organization like Citizen Corps. So if that's something that you're interested in, whether because you've experienced a disaster, you have a skill set, or you just want to help, we encourage people to go there and figure out more and find out if it's right for them.
I like what you said about doing something that's established, that's kind of set, so we're not just doing our own thing. We don't want to get in the way of where the real help is coming from. In your experience, where do you think people that are interested in being a part of Citizen Corps should begin?
Well, it really begins with that initial contact. You know, reach out and say, hey, this is something I'm interested in. I really want to be able to help. So you start having that discussion and find out if it's the right fit for you. Maybe it's another one of those Citizen Corps affiliates that I talked about, like the Medical Reserve Corps or the Fire Corps. There are a number of different options that if you have a specific interest or a specific skill set, you can get involved in. Citizen Corps is just one option, and it's one that we really support.
Talk a little bit more about the Medical Reserve.
So Medical Reserve Corps is an organization.
For doctors or just medical people that have already been trained, or how?
Yes. What it really is it takes people that have a little bit of a medical background. It can be as simple as first aid, response, CPR, that type of thing. If we get a doctor involved, that's fantastic. But what these people do is, in the middle of a disaster, they will pool together and support the medical needs of the community.
So it's pulling everyone together for one purpose, one heart, and one mind.
Can't say it better myself.
Tell us, as we begin to wind up, in summary, what is the real mission and heart of Citizen Corps?
What it's really designed to do is harness the resources that already exist. You know, you talked about bringing everyone together and that one heart, one mind, let's do the right thing. That's the organizational aspect. So it's two parts. They can offer you something. They can offer you training, resources, a proper way to get involved. And they get something out of you, and that they get to harness all the resources and energy and knowledge that you have and put it back into your community after a disaster.
So in other words, we have more to give than what we realize.
Absolutely. There are a number of people that may be sitting at home going, I'm not sure I have the skill set that they're looking for. No. We're always looking for people that have the right energy and want to pitch in.
That's good, and that's what I want our viewers to know today, that they need to call. Is there a number that they can call? Once again, give that website that you gave us.
Yep. Because it's run at the local level, there isn't just one phone number. Each council will have their own. But if you go to ready.gov, which is one of FEMA's websites, and search for Citizen Corps under the Be Involved tab at the top, you'll be able to plug in your zip code and find out where the nearest council is to you.
Are there other ways that our viewers can get involved with CORE?
Yeah, there are a number of different ways that people can get involved. Citizen Corps is just one option. What we also encourage people to do, talk to your local Red Cross or other nonprofit organization. A lot of churches have organized disaster response, so make sure you're talking to them. There might be other community organizations. Think of something that you're involved in your community, whether it's Lions Club or Kiwanis or something like that. They may have options for you. And lastly, can't say it enough, talk to your local officials. You see fire companies and ambulances and EMS at the local level are a lot of volunteers. They can always use our help and they can always use our support. So if it's something that you're interested in, reach out, ask the question. I'm pretty sure they're going to be really happy to have you.
Well, I tell you what, one last time, give us that website again.
Absolutely. Ready.gov, there's a little tab at the top, Be Involved, go there, and there's a number of different resources there for ways that people can get involved in their community.
That's so good. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you.
You've given us a lot of insight and wisdom, and I think this is the time and hour that we need to really begin to pull together. I so love the vision and the mission of Citizen Corps. And so if you're here and you've been listening today, there's a place for you, and as Peter has said, we have room for you. So once again, you've been listening to Joy in Our Town, and we'll see you on the next broadcast.